Hello, YouTube. It's DasGregor, and welcome to an interesting sidetracked review. I know a lot of you were expecting another portion of Gen 2, and I've just been kind of burned out on it for a little bit. Needed a break. Work's been busy, but I thought might as well talk about something different for a little bit and try to get a video out there for you guys to watch. That way, if you guys are missing your sleepy time when you listen to good old DOS to put you to sleep, you'll have something to listen to during those late hours. Actually, this is something a little different. I had a friend of mine ask me a couple weeks ago. He says, I've got a lot of old laptops that I'd like to put Linux on to make them work again and rejuvenate their abilities. He asked me for some ideas. Now, I did a lot of reviews 3 or 4 years ago on different flavors of Linux and what works best with what. And so I gave him a couple ideas that I had. And then afterwards, I was thinking, it's been a while since I looked at those. I wonder if they still work well. My folks, they have this old laptop. It's a Toshiba A55-S306. I believe it came out in 2003, 2004 timeframe. If we look at screen fetch, which I have right here, it is a Pentium Centrino 1.5 gigahertz, and it has 1.5 gigs of RAM, which means that it's been upgraded on the RAM, which I probably did many years ago and just don't remember, because I believe it only came with initially about 256 megs of RAM. I think it can have more than 1.5 gigs though, because I have seen kits online for 2 gigs of RAM for this machine, which is actually quite impressive for an almost 15-year-old laptop. It has Intel built on graphics, nothing fancy, shared of course. That causes some issues when trying to do a few things, but so far it's been pretty good. I actually set this up for my folks with Linux about 3 or 4 years ago when I was doing different reviews, and at that time I had put antiX-17 on there. I asked them if I could borrow it because I wanted to work with some different flavors of Linux and check out a few things. And so I looked at some different operating systems for Linux. Antix, of course, which is what we have on here, Peppermint, WattOS, Microwatt, and Bodhi. What I found with this particular piece of equipment was that I was running into some big issues with PAE. The motherboard and system is non-PAE compliant. There are fewer and fewer distributions out there that build a non-PAE system. Two of which that I found and tested were Antix and Bodhi. I hope I'm saying that right. But when I tried Bodhi, it seemed a little bit more memory intensive. It seemed like things lagged and dragged a little bit more than I liked. I'm not sure if that's their custom user interface and desktop manager or what it is, but I decided to go back to Antix. I have been very happy with Antix. Now, I also did try MX-17, which I didn't list in those that I had tried out, but yes, I did try to put that on there. And in a lot of cases, a lot of different distros complained almost immediately, stating that I was trying to boot a PAE-enabled kernel with system software that was non-PAE compliant. It did state that I could use the boot command force PAE to allow this, but to do that at my own risk. That always sounds so foreboding. But I did try a few of them, And I was honestly beginning to think that maybe the CD-ROM on this drive on this machine was starting to go bad, or there's just major flaky, buggy issues because a lot of those distros would not boot up at all. They'd start crashing and wouldn't even get me to a command line interface or a GUI. What I did find finally was that I needed to do a few more command lines at the boot. For instance, edd equals no got me a lot further along, and I actually was able to install a few of those distros that were PAE compliant. When I did updates with them, however, they would get so far and then they would start to complain that once again the kernel that it wanted to install did not support a non-PAE compliant system. And so I had problems all over again, gave up on a lot of those other distributions. antiX-17, the 32-bit version, which I'm running right now, is based on Debian Stretch, and it seems to operate flawlessly so far. I mean, I have had a few hiccups here and there, but nothing that has caused me too much alarm, nothing that I've been able to not get past. And to be honest, I would almost forget that this is a 14 or 15-year-old laptop. With antiX, I did do a little bit of theming and changed up a little bit of the way the windows look, did add a few applications and such. My only complaint with antiX on their menu here is that as a new user, you see a lot here. Terminal, yeah. File manager, yeah, that's great. Web browser, they're at the top. Editor, those four are wonderful. But then why do I have personal with personal menu video or help video? It is nice that it's there, but right on the main menu, I don't think it ought to be there. Update menu's okay. Desktop, app killer, control center. There's just a lot of things. It makes it so busy. And at first I was like, where in the world are my applications? No, not there, not there. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff here. And why would I need themes on the main? I mean, honestly, themes, in my opinion, ought to fall under applications, maybe under preferences and themes down here. But my point is, as a new user, it was a little confusing. Being the user that I am, though, I did figure it out eventually. It only took me maybe, well, I won't share that with you. But here we have a lot of the applications, and it does come with a lot of applications. In your accessories. Now, education, of course, it has that there because of LibreOffice, and it does come with LibreOffice, which is nice. And what I'm really impressed with, if we open up a few things like Terminal, it's almost instantaneous with the Terminal. And if we open up something like LibreOffice, if we go into Applications and Office, and we start up just the main LibreOffice, we'll see that that starts to load up, and the initial time, it takes a good maybe 3 to 7 seconds there. But boom, it's up and running. And if we wanted to go into a writer document, click that, and in less than a couple seconds, it's functioning. For a system as old as this one is, that is fabulous. You're not sitting here feeling like the screen refreshes forever. Why is it still painting the screen? I can see the pixels starting to form. No, it's not like that at all. It actually runs quite quickly. And the responsiveness, if I can type properly, so it types quite quickly. You're not sitting there typing really fast and then it's slowly catching up to you. I have seen operating systems do that were just not built properly for older hardware. But that seems to work really well. I've also installed a lot of games, or not really a lot, but a few games. If I didn't mention already, this laptop actually belongs to my parents. And I borrowed it because one, I wanted to upgrade it to a newer software. I wanted to see if there was still something out there that would work for a dinosaur such as this. and I wanted to give myself a slight challenge. So we've done a few things to make this a usable system. Now, one impressive thing is it does have an Intel wireless card, and that worked out of the box. If we go into back into our terminal here, and we were to do an LSPCI, and let's just make this a little bit larger here so we can look at everything. Your typical Intel stuff, your VGA, Intel graphics. It does have a few USB controllers, nothing too fancy. I could not, that's one thing. This is so old, I could not boot to USB, which meant I had to go find my archaic, and I couldn't even use CDRs. I had to use DVDRs because so many of these images nowadays are bigger than 700 megs. In a lot of cases, they're at least 1 gig in size, sometimes up to 2 gigs in size. So I have a lot of DVDs that I've not used for a very long time, and I had to burn a lot of those just so I could test a few different things. I could not boot USB. That just tells you right there how old this thing is. The audio controller is, of course, Intel based. It has a modem in it. Boy, that tells you right there. 56K modem in there. And of course, a wired Ethernet controller has FireWire as well. And all of that works even with this new operating system. Latest and greatest stretch. And it functions very well. It functions quickly. And that's really impressive. Now, I did try some of the games. I tried, for instance, in here in the games, the Chromium BSU, the fighter game. It's a little two-dimensional scroller. I, of course, tried the Extreme Tux Racer. I had Dracula with ScumVM working perfectly fine, although that took me a little bit extra to make work. The package from the Debian repository would fail with it, and so I downloaded the package from ScumVM because that's now in open source freeware for Dracula. Same as things like Flight of the Amazon Queen, Lure of the Temptress, and a few others that are out there beneath a steel sky. All point and click games from a long, long bygone era. Armageddon, that's like a Tron Light Cycles emulator. So there are some things that require to have some good graphics or at least decent frame rate for it to work. And if we were to go back into the terminal, for instance, and put in GLX gears, I'm not sure if that's going to display proper, but when I was doing this without my screen recording software running, I was getting 60 frames per second. With my screen recording software running, I'm barely getting a little over 30 frames, but still, for as old as this machine is, that is pretty good. And if you look here, if I find the right location here, that's not what I wanted. Go away. We are using Simple Screen Recorder to do the time capture. Now, this system is so old that it does not have a webcam built into it. So, some of you are saying, oh, thank goodness, we don't have to look at DOS's ugly mug. Now, I have had those who have said I've had a face for radio for many years. It doesn't bother me one bit. But yes, this system, of course, still has an old CD. It does have a CD burner in it. It couldn't burn DVDs. I had to find a different way to use another system to burn the DVDs because it did not have that capability. But at least it could read DVDs. If this system could not have read DVDs, I would have been hosed. That's something to mention. Even though I had an external DVD drive, this BIOS did not allow for any kind of booting except from the internal hard drive, a PC card, which who has a PC card hard drive anymore? I mean, I don't even know. Maybe if I looked in my closet, I might find a couple PC cards that would fit this thing, probably with about 1.5 inches of dust and who knows what else clogged in them. But there was no way to boot to an external CD drive. There was no way to boot to a USB drive. So I'm very thankful that this could at least read DVDs. It was new enough that it had that technology in it. Had that not been the case, I would not have been able to do anything with this. So you get to a point, guys, when you think about, okay, I've got this doorstop. I want to do something with it. It works really well to keep the door open. That's about it. There are some things to think about. PAE, for instance, can you run the install media? Yeah, I suppose I could have gotten a net install of some of these, but then you run into, will I have on that boot media for a net install the right drivers that will make the wired network work, or in some cases, the wireless network work? Now, in the live versions, I was actually able to get the wireless working in many cases. The card inside seemed to function quite well. So very happy with that. Now, of course, going back to a few things, it did come with Firefox. I did install PCMan FM for the file manager. I prefer that over their default. I did install VLC and a few other things like that. But I'm just impressed at how well this works. So this had SMTube, which is a nifty way to get to YouTube and watch YouTube. And the way it was working was it was actually playing the videos directly into VLC, which when I first tested YouTube, there was some stuttering and some hiccuping here and there. And I definitely don't think it was my network because I was able to download a lot of the updates still at 1 and 2 megabits or bytes per, about 2,000 megabits per second. Well, when I say that, it's about 2 megabytes. Let me put it that way. Yeah, find my words, right? So I know if I'm getting 1 to 2 megs per second being able to download things, there's no reason that it's the network or the wireless network causing me my lag. I was able to stream though through VLC where I downloaded the content and played it through VLC without any issues. Much better than when I tried to play it through the web browser. Now, I also installed Chromium on here, but one weird thing about Chromium is I've been noticing that there are some websites when doing some research that would crash and say, oops, something went wrong. But then I go into the Firefox ESR version, and those same websites, when I was doing research and going to them, did not have a problem. So I'm not sure if there's an issue with the Chromium application from the Debian repositories. I'm not a user of Debian on a regular basis. This is, of course, like I said earlier, based upon Debian. But quite impressive, very nice. So while it may not be new equipment, it may not be what you would ever want to install Gentoo on, although it would be kind of fun to do that. It might be kind of torturesome to install Gentoo on a machine like this, considering that the first system that I ever installed Gentoo on was a laptop that I bought in 2002, I believe, and I installed Gentoo on it back in 2004, 2005 timeframe. That's when I first started with Gentoo. And I used that for many, many, many years. It took forever to install, but it was one of the most reliable, best operating systems. And back then, there were a lot fewer drivers that worked with the hardware. And Gentoo was one of the first OSs that I was able to build the hardware driver support that the system needed to get everything almost 100% working with that system. So just a little bit of nostalgia and going back. But an interesting detour of the videos I have been putting out, not LFS or Gentoo. So if it's morning, evening, noon, or night, whatever you're having, I hope you enjoy it. If you've got that old piece of hardware that you're not sure what to do, think about installing an old good flavor such as antiX or peppermint. I'm not sure if if Linux Mint would work, or if it's gotten to be too new. But there are still some flavors of Linux out there that will work on older hardware and do a good job. But you do have to think about some of the things, such as, can you use USB boot media? Does the system have only a CD reader, or can it read DVDs? Could you boot from an external CD DVD reader? Just a few things that you don't normally think about, but you may need to take into consideration. But there are still, as of 2018, software packages out there running current versions of Linux distributions that still function, still work well, and still make old systems seem like it's today's system. So good luck to you, and until next time, bye guys.